James Delingpole is back with us. You were in the middle of a rant there, James. I was enjoying it thoroughly when sadly the gremlins took hold and kicked you off the line.
Yeah, everywhere I go, I seem to get terrible reception. But yes, I think probably like a growing number of people, I am planet struck by what is going on to our country. Not just our country, but our world. And it seems to me that normality is being assaulted by a really quite small number of people. For example, within the government, you've probably got, Dominic Cummings, you've got clearly Matt Hancock with his Messiah complex, you've got the aging King Theoden, Boris Johnson, with worm tongue whispering in his ear. Gove seems to have taken the side of it. But these guys seem to be acting on orders from the World Health Organization and from the World Economic Forum. They seem to be pursuing an agenda which is completely inimical to the interests of most people in our great and wonderful country. And I really worry that by the end of this, we are not going to have a recognizable country left. You already see it in the streets. The effects that muzzles have had on people. They don't make eye contact. It's very hard to communicate with people. You can't see people smiling. For as long as we've been on the earth, we have been able to communicate with watching the signs, the subtle signals of our face. All this is about to be thrown away for what? I mean, pretty much a non-existent problem, something that is no worse than a bad bout of seasonal flu.
Is there a way around? I mean, one of the proposals we've put forward here, James, is to curiously, because I think a lot of people would agree with what you've said, curiously say to the government, OK, if you really believe in this lockdown malarkey and you think it absolutely works, even though, and I was citing just a second ago evidence from Burnley where it's not working, they've had a stricter lockdown, cases have increased. Bolton, similar story there. We also know that 8 out of 10 people who have been tested and tested positive are asymptomatic, so no symptoms at all. We know the figures for under 65s who get it, nothing really happens. And there's all of this evidence that the government are ignoring. We tried to get a virologist on to say they support greater lockdown measures. We couldn't find one, oddly, other than a very mardy woman who came on yesterday, and she would never come back on with us, even if we paid her lots of money. But beside that, we couldn't get it. So if the government, who seem to be the only people who are wedded to this ideology, why not let them go for a 2-week lockdown? Let's have almost a half-term holiday for all of us and see what happens. We all know what will happen, but let the government put their own words to the test.
But then I think about all the businesses, all the pubs, for example, who have been driven to the edge of bankruptcy. That would surely tip them over the edge. But so many people's livelihoods have been destroyed by this massive government overreaction. And I'm not sure we should be playing their game. I think we should be resisting. There should be a campaign of civil disobedience. This is wrong. It's morally wrong on so many levels. I've got kids currently at one of the universities in the north of England. They're in a kind of lockdown or a semi-lockdown zone. They get the police, the people who should be their sort of friendly neighbourhood bobby, just trying to sort of ensure that nobody stabs each other. Instead, they are patrolling the streets every night, trying to ensure that no one moves outside their group of 6 or their household unit, and attacking them with swinging fines and threats of the universities threatening to expulsion. What kind of world is this where we do this to our young when they're on the threshold of their lives and they should be out drinking, socialising, doing a bit of work maybe as well, and instead they're being treated like criminals by this insane government?
What do you think the end game is, James? Well, where is this likely to go? Because if we carry on at this rate, I can't see anything changing inside 6 months.
I am full of despair because it's very obvious. I mean, let's just briefly mention Sir Patrick Vallance. He's got 600,000 shares in GlaxoSmithKline, which is one of the companies which will benefit from the vaccine. That guy should recuse himself from all decisions relating to the vaccine. But it seems to me that the cabal, let's call them, because they're not a government, they're the cabal, have decided that we're not going to get the normal back until we have a vaccine. Well, the vaccine may take a very, very long time. It may take more than 6 months. So what are we going to do? Carry on wearing masks? What about when the unemployment figures hit, when the furlough ends? What about the businesses that are going to be destroyed? I don't understand how they can get away with this, why there isn't more of a rebellion.
And just for clarity, I think it's AstraZeneca, isn't it? As distinct from the other one.
Oh, is it? Oh,
I take the point. Listen, James, I think the exasperation that you display is shared by many people, and thank you for that. And I know, look, different commentators have different views, and you can divide the room with a variety of opinions. And the reason I wanted to talk to James is because I don't concur with everything he says on everything, but I think on this, he just makes a very simplistic and very obvious point. And if I thought that this view was only coming from sort of centre-right commentators like James Delingpole or Toby Young, then I might be kind of thinking, okay, that's fine to have that opinion, but it's political. But it isn't. It's coming from clinicians. It's coming from virologists. It's coming from epidemiologists. It's coming from that world as well. And it's also coming out of the basic maths that we're seeing at the moment. And you look at those areas where there's that increased lockdown. I'll give you that figure again. Just as an example, Bolton is a good example. The rate of infection was 20 per 100,000 when the restrictions were first put in place. That's things like the ban on households mixing. 20 per 100,000. We're now into a good few weeks of that new shift. And the figure now is 255 per 100,000. The lockdown has done nothing. And you set that against that other stat that 8 in 10 people who have tested positive are asymptomatic at the time of testing, so they have no symptoms whatsoever. 19 of the 20 areas where restrictions have been in place for 2 months have seen a rise in infection. So it's this muddled picture and muddled thinking that leads us to almost despair, and certainly leads us, correctly so, to ask of our government quite a lot of questions. Because if centre-right commentators and centre-left commentators are agreeing on this, if doctors and scientists are agreeing on this, if the statistics aren't bearing it out, then you have to say, well, the government are kind of sitting slightly on their own in terms of the level of the sort of measures that are in place. I get the, social distance, wash your hands. That all makes perfect sense. Trying to make policy to get rid of a virus is, to coin that phrase again, sort of would be the equivalent in economics of trying to make water run uphill. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But if the government are sure and stand by their words, let's have a 2-week lockdown then. Let's really go for it. Treat it like a holiday, like a half term for adults, and see what happens. Would you support that? And genuinely, if you are a supporter, a genuine supporter of lockdown, and think, I'm not going to start shouting at you, I'm intrigued, I want to know, because that seems to very much be a minority view now.